Good morning. It was a couple of years ago, our daughter Kelly was out running some errands one morning and she was sitting at a stoplight when suddenly she was hit from behind. The car just lurched forward and it was obviously a great shock. She and her husband Andy had just gotten themselves a new SUV and they were so excited about it, and now she'd been in a wreck. It obviously wasn't her fault. I mean, she was sitting still at a stoplight. When she got out to go around behind to look, the damage wasn't really all that bad. I mean, it wasn't a terrible accident. It was going to require some body work, but it wasn't a terrible accident. No, she looked though at the person who had caused the accident, and it was a young girl. She was probably 16, 17 years old, and she was crying hysterically. As Kelly began to talk to her, it came out she'd gotten her driver's license not that long ago, and this was obviously her very first wreck. Kelly looked at her, and even though she was upset about her car, she couldn't help but feel a sense of compassion. She said to the girl, I didn't have my driver's license very long when I had my first wreck. I hit somebody from behind too, and it was my daddy's birthday. He and Mom were out having lunch, and I had to call him and say I'd been in a wreck. The girl looked up, she kind of helped to be a little more composed and kind of smiled, but then Kelly went on and said, but that wasn't really near as bad as the time that I blew up a gas station. What? No, it was true. Kelly went on to tell the story about when she was a senior in high school, and Marsh and I were over in the Holy Land leading a group from our church, and she was still here at home on her own, and she and a girlfriend had gone to a gas station to fill up with gas, and they'd filled up with gas, but they got to talking, and they got so distracted that when she got through, she had asked to fill it up with $5 or $10, whatever. Well, when it was full, they drove off, and they didn't take the handle out of the gas tank. And this was back when the gas hose didn't break away from the pump. No, it was an old-fashioned type, and it pulled the pump over, and the pump exploded, and it literally set the gas station on fire. Well, Kelly was telling this girl about that. Now her eyes were wide, and this girl was laughing. And Kelly said, these kind of things happen. Finally, she said, why don't you go call your dad? And so the girl, more composed now, got out her phone, and she walked off a few steps, and there she called her father. And Kelly said, I watched her call her dad, and I just started praying that he would be as understanding to her as you were to me. It really did touch me. But I have to really say I was so very proud of her. So very proud of her that she kept things in perspective and had compassion on a young girl who was having her first wreck and was in a difficult moment. And that Kelly found it within her to be able to share her own mistakes and own challenges in life in order to comfort her. I couldn't help but think, grace really does get passed on. And it really does start with the experience of God's grace in our lives. To know that we are loved and forgiven by a Heavenly Father, when we experience that gift of God's love, then it inspires us to go out and share that same love, that same forgiveness, that same gift of grace with others. You and I can go out and make this a better world today. We've been loved and forgiven by God. And now we just need to go out and remember how we stood in the need of God's grace and how we now go out and share that with others. It's a very stressful world with lots of anger, lots of stress. You and I can make a real difference if we just remember how we were loved and forgiven too. Go out today and share that love with another.